Okay, so we'll get going now. So morning everyone and welcome to our webinar this morning. It's Intelligent Inventory, Every Item Counts. This morning we have two speakers with us this morning, Mike and Tony. I will introduce everyone to Mike and Tony, and then we'll hear from Tony, who will talk us through the pain points of an inventory management system. And then we'll hear from Mike, who will talk us through the enterprise solution. We'll then have a Q&A finally. And if anyone has questions throughout the session, just pop them in the question box and I'll relay them at the end. So first I'll introduce you to our speakers. So we have Tony Dignam. Tony is the Managing Director at the Agile Executive, who is a partner of Enterprise. Tony is a thought leader with 30 years experience delivering financial and operational performance within businesses. Tony has experience in acquisitions, sale, restructuring of, turning around and attracting new business. Tony also helps SMEs with business planning and helps improve profitability and their cash flow. We have Mike Scott. Mike is our inside sales manager here at Enterprise. Mike has 20 years experience in IT, and 7 of those he has helped companies with ERP investments. Mike has experience in CRM implementation, and he also manages sales teams both from a business development perspective and an account management perspective. Mike also helps companies keep abreast of the trending technologies so they can optimize their cash flow and maximize profits. So with further ado, I'll hand you over to Tony, who will talk us through the inventory growing pains.
Thanks very much. So just, I suppose, one or two extra bits just on myself, which is, I suppose, relative or relevant for my background in, I suppose, understanding the pain of inventory. Over the last sort of 25 years, I've worked in senior finance roles, I've worked in MD roles, and I've worked in consultancy roles. And I was involved in setting up a company that implemented ERP systems back in the late 90s, having to do with Y2K and all of the issues around that. So over the past sort of 25 years, I've implemented about 15 different systems, competing systems of Enterprise over sort of 40 different companies during that time. So, and in the Agile Executive, we work with hundreds of small businesses, sort of just helping them grow their business, helping them look at how they can move things forward in their business. So we see a lot of times in small businesses where they're using Excel to manage inventory at the start, which is fine at the beginning when you've got small volumes and small value tied up in inventory, but it becomes quite difficult as a business grows. And particularly if you end up with, with different locations, if you end up with vans on the roads, you end up with, stock being held in vans, stock being held in different locations, it becomes very time consuming for the business to track and manage the inventory. And it not only, it's not just the time, it's the cost, of the resources that you have. So it becomes costly, it becomes expensive, it's tying up a lot of your resources. And then it's the lack of accuracy in the information. So in trying to keep Excel updated, we've all seen that we suddenly end up with multiple versions of files. You end up with different people moving inventory and not being able to access the file. Not being able to keep the information up to date. So either one of two things happens. Either you end up with a situation where you end up having to hold more stock just because there's a fear of running out of stock. So you end up holding lots of some stock, and then you end up with situations where you end up running out of stock. So you miss the opportunity to fulfill orders. So you've got this real, I suppose, mixed case of lots of stock, maybe stock becoming obsolete because you're having to hold too much of it. So you've got the carrying cost of stock, the cash tied up in stock where you've got too much of other items. And then, blame game going on within a company, somebody took stock, didn't update the Excel spreadsheet. So it all becomes very messy and very difficult to manage, particularly as a business grows. One of, over my time, one of the real frustrations of the systems that I worked with was that if you could start with a lot of small businesses start with, one of the, a basic system, doesn't have stock as part of it. Then when they want to start implementing, stock or inventory management modules, they've got to go and implement a whole new system. And it was a real frustration of mine going back to the late 90s when I started implementing systems, first of all, and particularly some of the bigger players in the market, that if you wanted to sort of have grow your business with their system, you kept having to implement new systems, which was a real frustration. And it was a real, a big ordeal every time you wanted to, your business was moving, was growing. And it was always something that frustrated me. Surely in the world of software as a service, that there should be a system that allowed you to just start as a small business, and literally as you grow your business, you just add on more functionality. And this is something that's frustrated me probably over the last 25 years. Earlier this year, I was introduced to Enterprise through another partner that we have. I was delighted to see that finally the frustrations that I've had over the last 25 years were addressed in a system that included inventory as an option. So you could start small, start with accounts payable, accounts receivable, use Excel at the start if that's what you wanted to do for your inventory. But then as your business got a little bit bigger and got more complex, you could just turn on more functionality and just add the additional functionality as you grew. So I was delighted to see that Enterprise, and there was finally a system that would do that. So that's, I suppose, from my point, the real pain, of not having the system is, there's the significant cost. So putting on my finance hat, the significant cost of the inventory the extra inventory tied up. There's costs associated with the resources that are inefficient, that are managing the inventory. There's costs associated with losing orders because you don't have the stock that you thought you had. So delighted to see that there is a solution, and happy to hand over to Mike, where he can talk a bit more about the specifics of how Enterprise solves the problems that as a finance director I would have faced and would face on a regular basis. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Thanks for that. I agree with your experience of different systems over the years. It's interesting, we deal primarily with small businesses, but everybody in Ireland perhaps has a friend or a relative who's worked for a large corporate in the software ecosystem that is present in Ireland. And typically what those corporate level entities do is they provide software that's designed to optimize workflow processes in a very good way. But often the aggregated workflows that they solve aren't available at a price point affordable to SMBs in Ireland. So what we're really trying to do with Enterprise is bring the automation of those processes into a software package that's affordable to an SMB. But it's typical that people will use a term called ERP, which some people will have heard of, which is an acronym for Enterprise Resource Planning. Now, in the real world, or in the small business world, where people tend not to be so invested in acronyms like that, people will often refer to their finance package or their CRM package, or they may have a stock package. And as Tony said, some people will use Excel, some people will have a finance package for the finance team, and maybe some other software package or no package at all, or a combination of the finance system and Excel. In terms of what Enterprise can do, it can allow you to have your finance package, but also link it to inventory, okay? And with that inventory, you can link the two together as one system, rather than finance having to talk to guys in the warehouse or people in the sales team and trying to figure out what was actually sold and how can they account for that, or how can they keep a track of their working capital. In terms of, Tony mentioned this earlier on, in terms of being able to know where your stock is, are you overstocked or understocked? Or is it a case that one location is understocked, but the other locations are quite optimal? Having visibility of what's in your different stock locations is a huge issue. So for example, if you had a business running out of Dublin, okay, and you had another shop maybe in Galway, could you get the stock from Dublin to Galway, or do you need to order it, and who are you ordering it from? So having that visibility on your stock is in the system as well. And obviously being an island in the UK and Ireland, people need to export and import, and therefore there's a lot of reliance on multiple currencies. So that's something that you can buy your stock in one currency and you can sell it in another effectively, or vice versa. We also offer the standard, what people would refer to as your quote to cash process. Okay, we actually go a step further than that, and I'll highlight the difference between our different packages later on, where we also offer what some people would refer to as the opportunity to cash process. So that's when we can get very sophisticated. So for example, not just maybe having a stock system and a finance system, but also having a sales CRM system and the stock system and the finance system as one package, all built together. So we'll talk a bit about that as well in our maturity model, and as well as the order to pay purchase price as well, or some people might call it the procure to pay process. So the steps involved in allowing or giving control of the purchasing to your various staff, but having safety measures in to make sure that they're not over purchasing, or that the value of their purchases aren't potentially risking your cash flow. So Enterprise can allow you to put controls around that as well. The benefits, obviously, if you can manage your stock, obviously you have optimal stock levels. That has an impact on your cash flow. It also has an impact on your customer experience for your client base, because if you can, at the very least, give them an ETA and it tends to be more realistic if you have a good stock system. Clients will tend to be happy with that, and you can prioritize things like deliveries, which we allow for as well. So it helps you get a really good customer experience out to your end customers as well. It gives your warehouse manager or your finance team real-time reporting on the performance of stock as well. So somebody might want to know what their top selling item is, for example, and that's great. We also want to know what our least selling item is, because we might need to exit or make some changes to what inventory we're investing in. So that's one of the benefits as well. And then staying up to date with notifications on home screens and dashboards. This is something that if anybody's ever seen Enterprise, they'll just get it by seeing it. And we will hopefully do a demonstration of this at some point with another webinar. But in a nutshell, what that means is the secret sauce to Enterprise is to make the system simple and easy for everybody to use, no matter what their job is in the company. And as you know, in a lot of small companies, people have to wear many different hats. So for example, maybe your sales team have to be involved in credit control, or maybe if you're a really small company, you might do the purchasing and the selling yourself all in one. Okay, so we make no assumptions as to how big or small somebody that might start out with Enterprise could be, and for that reason we have a maturity model. But no matter what it is that you want to do, and no matter what it is that you want your staff to do, the system, the secret sauce to our system is to make it simple and easy for people to do their job, especially around things like stock management and CRM, and even the finance. So that's the key. If you have a system that's easy to use, the benefits are you can train your staff in quickly. The impact of turnover of staff isn't as high a risk. So for example, if you bought a very expensive ERP system or software package and it took a long time to train your staff on it, and you lose your staff for whatever reason, or you have seasonal staff, how much time are you losing by having to train them in? And therefore, how much cost is there actually to having to do that? So they're the kind of things that having a simple and easy system do that make life a lot easier for you. And then in terms of the left hand and the right hand, as we all know, we've all worked in companies where we've had bad experiences where the left hand and the right hand weren't always connected very well. Having a notification in the home screen, which is proactive, helps people stay on top of not just what they're doing, but also what their colleagues are. So for example, if I worked in the warehouse and I can see that the sales guys have a high number of orders a day, I'm proactively being notified. So it might even give me a bit of news in terms of preparing my day a little bit better, or having that information optimally in such a way that I can plan ahead a bit better as well. So again, if you're a managing director, for whatever reason, you may not want the staff to see too much at the same time. So we have permissions which allow you to control what people can and can't see, and you can adjust it easily on the fly as well. So you have complete control there. But really, there's no reason why people can't stay on top of their work a bit better, because they're getting the notifications that they need to follow up the tasks that are critical to the business. The other thing about a CRM system is CRM can mean different things to different people. It stands for customer relationship management, but in small businesses, especially businesses that have stock, it allows people to get the information they know to fulfill those orders. Okay. It also lets people fulfill tasks with customers and suppliers in certain cases where you rely on your suppliers, but fill out tasks that are critical. Tony gave an example earlier on where somebody might have taken stock without putting a notification in the system, and what impact could that have? So being aware of that, or even stating your intention to do something, can be done in an activity. Now, where that gets really useful is the history of the activity is always there. So let's say, for example, myself and Tony work in the same company, and we have a lot of customers that we have to manage, and we have a very heavy relationship with those customers where they perhaps rely on us a little bit. It's very important that Tony knows what needs to be done with the customers when I go on holidays, and equally it's important that I need to know what's to be done when Tony goes on holidays. Now, if Jennifer is working with us as well, and Jennifer goes on maternity leave for 6 months, we need to know what the history was, or we need to know, depending on any variable situations that happen, we need to know where the history is. And having a CRM that gives you the true history of that, not just the transactions, but even the intentions of what you need to do with your customers and suppliers, that's a huge benefit, especially, and anybody that's been through a recession will know this, but especially when there's times where you may attempt to sell to a certain audience, and for whatever reason they're not able to buy. But you know what? If you even have a repository of the people that were interested a year ago or 2 years ago, well, with a CRM system like that, now you've got a much better chance of selling to people who you're not going in cold to a year later or 2 years later. So CRM is really important, and if you can get that with your stock system, that's really adding value to the benefit of the stock system. So we provide an intelligent inventory system, but it's part of an overall master plan, which is to get your other departments working in an optimal way. So why the inventory? Well, it's scalable. Whether you're a two-man company or a sole trader, or whether you've got 100 staff, our solution is scalable, and you can go all the way up the journey. We'll talk about that on the next slide. And we've a dedicated support team, and then we have apps now. Enterprise was born in the cloud, and we have apps that let you manage certain processes from the convenience of your smartphone. So, for example, not having to go back into the office to see what the stock levels are, or being able to do a converted quote to an order, or even record. What's really critical now for people is recording proof of delivery. We know that with the pandemic recently, that people are less inclined to ask you to sign a device because it's close contact. So our delivery solution allows you to capture a photograph instead of capturing the proof of delivery on a device, if you want to do that as well. Jen, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so we're talking about tracking stock in multiple locations. So the real power behind this, I mentioned the ease of use of the system, but also what the actual system does now as well, in terms of helping people stay on top of more tasks that impact that as well. So, for example, a lot of people that sell stock traditionally would have had bricks and mortar store. And you'll know a lot of people had to change the direction of their business during the pandemic. So, for example, a lot of companies that would have sold through bricks and mortar suddenly had to start selling online. If people weren't taking online selling before the pandemic, they're certainly taking it seriously now. So what if you can manage your online sales and the inventory that you need to facilitate them from the same system that facilitates your bricks and mortar sales or your traditional wholesale environments? So if you can do that from one system, you're saving a lot of time. And if we can make it easy for you to do it, it means you can change direction quickly. So that's why Enterprise is powerful, because we offer this omni-channel inventory management solution. So if I got some sales orders through bricks and mortar store today, but I also got some orders through my website, I can see what was sold, which source it was sold from, and I can see how my business is performing from a multi-channel perspective as well. Another thing that's huge, on the bottom left-hand corner there, you will see your dynamic banking integrations. We always talk about cash flow being important, and the reality of your cash flow is always represented in your bank account, as we all know. And when we say dynamic, what we really mean is you've got a live feed to your bank in Enterprise if you want. So through the accounting module, we recently launched a really snazzy banking integration, which in effect lets you know what's happening in real time, but also lets you reconcile transactions. So you may have some transactions that you've posted in your system, purchases and sales, and you want to be able to match them off against your bank feed in real time as it comes in. So you can do that through what's called an automatic bank reconciliation. So really helping you stay on top of your cash flow. And then, as previously mentioned, buying and selling in multiple currencies, and setting up what are known as price lists. And then if you grow your business, the automation of maintaining the correct price for the correct customer without risk, we put best practices in there. So for example, your sales staff, if they have a customer that's an existing customer, they don't need to worry about what the price is for an item that they're selling. It's automatically in there. If they want to change it for whatever reason, they can, but they don't need to go looking for the information, because once you bring all the data into Enterprise, the hard work is done for you when you do the setup properly. So you don't have to worry about what the purchase price is or what the sell price is of an item, even if it's in a different currency. So for example, if you were selling widgets, and you're selling widgets in the Republic of Ireland, you'll have a euro price with a specific price point or a suggested retail price. And if you were selling widgets to customers in Northern Ireland, you'd be obviously selling in sterling, and you'd have perhaps a different price for the sterling. And then if you needed to sell to the continent, for example, you might have a second price, or you might have a trade price and a retail price, for example. So managing those multiple prices is something that the system allows you to do it once, and then it's really easy for your staff to follow the guidelines with less room for error. Really, I think that's the key. So so that's kind of the 4 pillar points of why we think the solution is powerful. Now, we did talk about having a valuable CRM system, and we talked about having a CRM where you could see what was going on with your existing customers and know what you need to do with them. We also talked about the value of being able to stay on top of customers prospects that aren't customers, but that you'd like to sell to. So in terms of what most CRM systems do for that process, is they allow sales staff to manage their pipeline. And to manage their pipeline, they set up leads, and the leads let you know what you can forecast at a given time period, such as a month or a quarter or a year. Most people will go quarterly or monthly. And we put in a pipeline which allows you to start out with a sales opportunity, which is why we sometimes refer to the order to cash process as the opportunity to cash process. Because as you mature and you invest more in Enterprise, you could start with just our stock system, but then you might decide to take our full ERP package, which allows you to have the lead management, tracking those leads and tracking your sales team, as well as managing your stock and your finance. The inventory lets you go up to 50 warehouses. So like I said, it could be a sole trader. You won't have 50 warehouses, but as your business grows and you start to go into the hundreds with your staff, you will probably start to get more warehouses if you're in the inventory business, and we allow you to go up to 50. One thing that Tony mentioned as well was the possibility of having stock in your van. That's something that our system allows you to do as well. I talk to a lot of clients, and they share a lot of stories with me. It's amazing how much of those vans. So for example, somebody that might be selling household goods might not have huge stock in their van on any given day, but somebody that's selling industrial equipment could have tens of thousands of euros in that van. So it's really important that they're able to track the stock, even if when it's taken out of the warehouse, what happened to that stock, what journey did that stock go on. And our system has what's called relationship maps that let you see that. People like Tony might refer to 3-way invoice matching. So our client issued us a purchase order because they have their own tracking system. We gave them a sales order, but we referenced their purchase order, and they can goods receipt it. And if you're using Enterprise yourself to buy things, you can do a goods receipt, so that when you get an invoice from your supplier, it's something that you were expecting, not something that's a surprise, and that makes a big difference to your planning naturally. So that's something that that Enterprise lets you. That's how we let you manage that as well. And that fearless integration with banks and Stripe. We're very proud to work with an Irish company like Stripe, where they're really taking over the online payment platform, and it makes it easy for you to manage online payments. We even have apps that let you do it from an app as well if you want to take payment from a customer in an app, and it even ties in with our credit control process as well. So they are other ways that we empower the users to improve their cash flow. So at a high level, then, if you were to go to the Enterprise website, you would see 4 different packages. There is one there which is called Invoice and Pay. That's available for free. Anybody's welcome to use it. We're an open book. We have the prices published for our UK and Irish markets. For the other packages, starting out with the accounting package, that's just a basic accounts package. And then we have the inventory package, which is an accounts package and an inventory package all in one. And then we have the full ERP package, which is now an accounts package, an inventory package, and a CRM package all in one. And that's really what the definition of an ERP system is. And that when you get into that arena, you're now dealing with functionality that we believe otherwise would only be available through corporate entities at very kind of heavy capital investments. So we believe that we're kind of bringing a bit of democracy into the small business world with enterprise, enabling them to get the true value of an ERP at an SMB price point. In terms of buying a system and choosing a system, it's one thing to make the decision that you're going to buy it and you consult with your staff, but getting help and getting advice on how to change systems, because the secret is that it's not always a straightforward project. It can sometimes be time consuming. It can cause pain and grief in the real world for people when they have to do it. So we were very delighted to get introduction to the Agile Executive. Tony and his team have done this they have a lot of experience doing this. They have a lot of experience about best practice. And in terms of migrating systems, you're going to need experienced people that have done this before. And that's where the Agile Executive come in, and they can make that journey less painful and help map those best practices into your organization. So that's why we're delighted to do this with Tony and his team today.
So now I'll just open the floor up to any questions that we've gotten in throughout the webinar. So Mike, we have our first question in was, what's the time implications of implementing an inventory management system?
Yeah, sure. So it's a great question. There's a lot of variables involved when a company decides that they're going to go to a new system. One of the questions is, have they thought about what the best processes are? And another part of it is their data actually ready to go? So this is something that Tony and his team have a lot of experience in. So Tony, you might add a bit of input into that one as well.
Yeah, I suppose the key thing in it, and what can take the time, is making sure you're, I suppose, adapting your processes. It's no point putting in a new system and continuing to do things the way you were doing it in the past. So you've got to look at how you're doing things. You've got to look at your processes. You've got to make sure your team are ready to change how they're doing things and are going to embrace the system. So there's a lot of sort of preparation from that point of view. The actual time of actually putting the system in is probably the quickest part of it. It's all of the processes and systems, getting the data, make sure how much data you're going to transfer over into the new system. There's no point transferring if it's rubbish data. So there's some key decisions that need to be made. So it's that thought process and getting that right and getting people bought into it is kind of the key to implementing the system and getting the real value out of any system that you're putting in.
Okay, great. And then we have another question in. So how can you upgrade from inventory if needed to another solution? What are the implications of that?
Yeah, sure. So the great thing is that you can do that in a few seconds. If you want to upgrade, just log in with your credit card and hit the upgrade button within the system, and that's it. You're on the next package up that you want to go to. So that there's 4 packages there, and like I said, the first one is Invoice and Pay, which is complimentary for anybody out there. So if you know anybody, perhaps that's a sole trader starting out their business, we'd very much welcome them to look at that. But as you start out with the accounts package, the next step up is the inventory and accounts, and then the ERP eventually. And at any point when your company is ready to make the next step, they can start out with any one of them, but when they're ready to make the next step, then it's just a matter of upgrading seamlessly on the fly.
Okay, great.
I just add to that. I mean, this is back to my point that having worked with many systems over the years, there's many of the sort of largest competitors, don't want to mention names, that you start off with a very basic system, and you think that if you're migrating to another version of their same system, that it should be straightforward. but in actual fact, it's a whole re-implementation. So you might have the basic accounting system. Now you want to move and put in, the inventory. You've got to go through a whole re-implementation process, which is very time consuming. And that's generally happening at a time when your business is growing. That's when you need to be adding extra functionality. And the last thing you need to be doing is facing that, having to implement a new system at a time when you're growing really fast. So again, I think that's the beauty of getting in with enterprise at an early stage, is it's just a matter of, literally in the background, extra functionality being turned on, and being able to, figure out how to use that functionality much more straightforward than having to, constantly change systems. Or the other alternative up to now was you invested in a very expensive system that you're only using a very small portion of it in the early stages, but you're paying, a huge cost in order to have that flexibility. So I think that's the real benefit of enterprise, is you've got that flexibility, scalability at a cost that's affordable to an SME.
Yeah, great point. I'd also add that enterprise was born in the cloud, so it wasn't software that was built for a system that was perhaps like a traditional software system that would sit on a server somebody in somewhere's building. It was built as a true public cloud solution. The cloud isn't new to people these days. I think everybody know what the cloud is and they know what it does. But the costs are very transparent with enterprise as well. But as part of that cloud birth, I think we realized that the UI was key to success. So, even if you have something that's affordable and it does processes, how easy is it to use? And that ties in with user interface when you go onto the website and see it.
That's great, Mike. We've no more questions in, unless if there's any closing comments from Mike and Tony before we close the webinar out.
I'm just from my point of view, happy that if anybody has questions, maybe I'll share my details, or you have their contact details. Maybe you share them with them, and just to chat. As I said, I've pretty much there isn't a system really. Most systems that are out there, I have used them. I've implemented them. So happy if anybody on the call wants to have a chat about the different systems, and certainly be able to answer questions that anybody has around the implementation. And I suppose key is what's required, from internal resources, both from a skill set point of view and a timeline point of view. They're often the real challenges that a business has is, if I've got people that are busy, how do I implement a new system when they're already busy doing their day-to-day work? So having been through that quite a number of times, this certainly can help and answer a lot of those questions if anybody has any.
That's great, Tony. And I'm going to be sharing the recording and the presentation to all attendees. So in that email, I can include your contact details so people can contact you directly.
Yeah, great.
Great. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. And thanks a million to Mike and Tony for taking time out this morning to present the webinar. And if anyone has any questions, I'll send on the contact details to contact Mike and Tony after. So thanks a million.